Happens to my property's value and appreciation potential when townhomes or multi-residential properties are built near or right beside or even on the back of my home? If I want to renovate my house, where do I start if I have no experience? What are the potential problems when buying a custom luxury home, and what are the important items to identify prior to writing an offer? When buyers put in a term for sellers to have the home professionally cleaned, to what standard of cleanliness can one expect? I'm going to help you answer these questions. Plus, I'm going to go over the Calgary real estate market and what it did in September. Then I'll follow up with the advice for buyers, sellers, and investors. What's up, guys? This is Jasben Lai with the LiveInnerCity real estate team at Real Broker. Now let's get right into it. Let's get into the first question. What happens to property value and your appreciation potential when townhomes or any type of multi-residential units are built near or even on the backside of your home? In Calgary, single-family detached homes are being torn down and builders are building side-by-side duplex or even 4 townhome complexes with basement suites. This is happening more and more, especially in the inner city, because the city of Calgary wants higher densification. We had a client who purchased a home with townhomes facing the backyard. For property value, before the seller put it on the market, the list price and similar sold comparables already adjusted for the pricing for the townhomes being built in the back. That particular home had a corner lot, a bigger lot, it was an inner city community in Altadore. This kind of gentrification will continue to happen, and we can only look at the snapshot of value today. But if you want to look forward, the value is already adjusted for the townhomes built in the back. For appreciation, the location, the community, lot features like the bigger and corner lot are primary drivers of appreciation. Those things aren't going to change no matter what is built behind, but you do lose a view and privacy. Look at the things that are most likely not going to change. Now here's a big tip for you. If you are buying in the inner city or an area where old homes are being torn down and new ones are being built, such as infills, avoid buying homes either on the corner lot or within 4 to 5 houses from the corner lot, because builders in Calgary are buying these corner lots and putting up 4 townhomes on them with basement suites. So that's a total of 8 dwellings. That can get pretty busy. When buyers put a term in for sellers to have the home professionally cleaned, to what standard of cleanliness can one expect? In Calgary, it's not uncommon for buyers to ask sellers to have the home professionally cleaned for possession, but what is the standard? The truth is, there is no standard, but because cleanliness is subjective, generally you'll get it pretty clean. Most people will consider it 80-90% clean, but you will sometimes need to take it to 100% on your own, because that's your definition of cleanliness when you move in. And because it's subjective, it's typically done by a company, and we ask for receipts, and that must say it's paid, and we physically verify it when we do the walkthrough. So when possession happens, there are no surprises. I want to renovate my house, but where do I start if I have no experience? One of the best first steps you can take is asking the sellers for the blueprints. Why? That will help an interior designer as well as your contractor with the planning portion of this. You will have a visual representation of where the important things are in the house, even things such as plumbing, electrical, etc. And having all of that will really help you to come up with a more accurate quote and cost for your entire project. Your interior designer can also help with the floor plan by opening up walls and to choose your finishings. Your contractor will be able to execute on those plans. Here's a quick tip for you. If you're buying a property and planning a big renovation, put in the terms of your purchase contract that the seller will provide the blueprints. This way, the seller is legally obligated to deliver the blueprints if they have it. What are the important items to identify when buying a custom luxury home? Here are some issues that you may run into. Number 1, there are not many, if any, direct sold comparables because of the custom nature of the home. Or 2, how do you determine the value and come up with the offer strategy? Okay, so you can check the sales history, when the seller bought it, when they first listed the property. Did it expire? Has anything changed since they bought the property? Have they made any improvements to it? And also, have any changes happened in the surrounding areas? You want to know who your sellers are as well. Determine a timeline of what the sellers went through. that can really help determine what your offer strategy may look like. So you basically want to build a profile of the sellers that you don't know. That way you know who's negotiating with you on the other side. Okay, here's a quick story. We were working with buyers for a custom luxury home, and they needed possession at a certain time. As well, they had a certain amount of cash for a high deposit amount. The property was vacant. Through the research that we did, we first found out what the sales history looked like. We noticed that they had been trying to sell the property since 2020. And back then, the owners were still living in it, but now it was vacant. The interesting thing about that was the property was listed at a lower list price than it was today. We also took a look at the timeline, and between 2020 and about 3 months after, the listing got taken down. And then there was a gap until 2022 this year when they listed the property again. Now, one has to ask what happened there. And what we do is we do ask the listing agent a lot of questions so we can really come up with a profile and to understand timelines and the situation for the seller. Turns out that this property was rented during that period of time where the property was not listed. Also, the sellers were original owners of this custom luxury home. Doing a bit more digging on the seller situation, we found out who they were and also which companies they worked for. Now, of course, we don't always want to creep on people's personal information, but the reality is that there are plenty of social profiles out there that you can find out a little bit more. And you can usually find the name of the sellers on the property title. So after that, we did ask, have any improvements been made to the property since the buyers first bought that property until now, which had been about 3 years? When the answer was no to that question, so one can conclude that since no improvements were made to the property, and at one point the sellers were willing to sell for a less amount, that could be a great starting point for our offer strategy. The outcome was we were able to win this property for a great price for our buyers, mainly because we provided a rationale and walked the listing agent through that rationale so that they can also provide that information to their sellers. All right, let's get into the section for the advice for buyers, sellers, and investors. Advice for buyers. Rising interest rates did not have quite the effect of lowering buyer demand than most predicted. And typically what happens when interest rates do rise is that there's an initial shock where demand does slow down slightly because now buyers qualify for less. But some buyers will look at the longer term and realize that interest rates are not coming down, at least for the next year to 2 years. And they still need to buy during that time. So then they come back to the market quickly and you do see an increase in buyer demand again. If you're buying a home right now, it's important to note that yes, there are less multiple offers happening on properties. The inventory is a little bit lower right now. So when a very desirable property comes onto the market, it still can happen where you'll be in this multiple offer situation. Make sure that you have the right strategy going in and give yourself the best opportunity to win that property for yourself. By the way, if you're having trouble choosing a fixed versus variable rate mortgage, you're probably going to want to check out Felix's video here, and he's going to give you some things to consider before you choose. Advice for sellers. We are still currently in a seller's market in Calgary for all property types except for apartments. If you currently own a condo and considering selling, you're going to want to listen to this. Check out Felix Chan's video here for a September market update where he predicted that we are close to the peak of sales for apartments. So in August, 2 months ago, sales were up by a whopping 57%, but in September, it's now dropped down to 23%. Inventory is currently a little bit lower and not many people are putting their homes up for sale for all property types from condos to single family homes. So if you've been thinking about selling, it would be really worth your time to consider doing it now since you have less competition for listings. Advice for investors. For those of you who are thinking about investing in Calgary but haven't made the jump yet, I want to remind you why you should move or invest in Calgary. There's no HST or PST and no land transfer tax. We also have the highest average household incomes in the country. Also the highest disposable incomes in all of Canada. Right now we have increased net migration to Calgary, and we have little to no rent controls, which makes it super landlord friendly. And we have low purchase price compared to other major urban centers in Canada. We also have very well educated population here. Here's another tip for you. If you have a tenant who is behind on payments, do not use their security deposit as rent, because they could end up trashing your place and you would have no money from them for any damages. Instead, go through the RTDRS, or Residential Tenancy Dispute Resolution Service, the legal way to resolve these type of issues. Here's another tip. If you're planning to demolish the home and build an infill later, do not tell your tenants now at the beginning of the tenancy, otherwise they could trash the place thinking the house will be demolished anyways. And what would suck even more about this situation is if you don't actually end up demolishing the house. And what you'll be left with is higher wear and tear in your property, which will mean you need to put more money and effort and time into bringing it back to a current standard, and also a poorer tenant quality, which is going to ride out the rest of their tenancy there. Also, did you know that you can build a carriage house or a laneway home in your backyard above your garage and cash flow? These are fully self-contained units that normally sits above the garage. They'll cost you about $250,000 to build. And if you want a tour of that, you can check out our video here on the video that we did for laneway homes. All right, let me share with you the Calgary real estate market stats for October 2022. And we have to look at last month what happened. So here it is. Sales for detached homes were down by 23.2%. Semi-detached was down by 27.1%. Townhomes were up 2.8%, and apartments saw an increase of 23.3%. When we're talking about inventory, detached was down by 11.4%. Semi-detached was down by 26.6%. Townhomes were down by 33.6%, and apartments were down by 26.2%. So in summary, inventory was down for all property types. Let's talk about new listings. Detached homes were down 11.6%. Semi-detached saw a decrease in 19.6%. Townhomes was a decrease of 3.8%, and apartments were down by 4.3%. Now let's take a look at price. Detached homes had an average price of about $638,000, or a 10.5% increase. Semi-detached at $509,000, which is a 9.5% increase. Townhomes had an average price about $343,000, which is an 8.8% increase. And apartments ended with the biggest increase in price out of all property types this month, for $308,000, or 19.5% increase. What's interesting is the apartment pricing, as when we looked at last month in September, the average price was only $270,000. So that is about $38,000 difference in just 1 month. Now we may have had a few luxury apartments bringing up that pricing and dragging up that average, since this is the average price. Now let's look at months of supply. Detached homes was 2.28 months, or up by 15.4% year over year. Semi-detached was 2.49 months, or up 0.8%. Townhomes are at 1.78 months, or down 35.5%. Apartments are at 2.83 months, and that saw a 40.1% decrease year over year. To summarize the months of supply, all property types except apartments are still in a seller's market. Well, there you have it. Hopefully you were able to get a lot of insight into what's happening in Calgary's real estate market. As always, please continue to like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel. I'm Jasben Lai with the LiveInnerCity real estate team with Real Broker, helping you keep real estate simple. We'll see you next time.